board tonight of county commissioners.
Okay, if you kind of begin to move to your seats, please, and we'll open.
This is more fun.
I have to do that, though.
Why?
I have to be on the board of county commissioners.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. It's 9 o'clock, just a few minutes after, 3 seconds after. We check for a quorum real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We do have a quorum. Make quick introductions, and just a reminder, we'll consider moving into executive session as our first order of business. We hope to keep that real brief, probably 10 minutes. So if the board makes that decision, we'll excuse everybody else who is not seated as a voting member of the board, and then reconvene in regular session, hopefully around 9:15. So let's make quick introductions around the table. Norm Steen, Teller County Commissioner, your chair. Jill?
Jill Gabler, City of Colorado Springs.
Neil Levy, City of Woodland Park.
With me. Yolanda Avila, City of Colorado Springs, District 4, and my guide dog, Puma.
Sharon Thompson, Fountain.
Andy Pico, City of Colorado Springs.
Don Wilson, Tunnel Monument.
Ken Giray, Manitou Springs.
Dave Finkelstein, Air Force Academy.
Ron Jeffrey, Schriever Air Force Base.
Kirsten Aguilar, Peterson Air Force Base.
Hal Allgaier, Fort Carson.
Somewhere, Dick Ellsner, Park County.
Stan Vanderwerf, El Paso County Commissioner.
Andy Gunning, PPACG.
Tyler Stevens, Green Mountain Falls.
Mark Waller, El Paso County.
Very good. And thank you all for coming. I appreciate you taking the time today and being prompt. We do have the agenda before us. Any corrections or changes to the agenda? If not, let's take a motion to approve that agenda.
Move to approve.
Commissioner Waller and Commissioner Vanderwerf. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, very good. Our next item on the agenda is to consider, pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute Sections 24.6-4024B and F, Section 1, the board in open session is to determine whether it will hold a closed executive session. Issues to be discussed involve personal matters relating to the annual evaluation of the executive director of the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. The chair shall poll the board members, and upon consent of 2/3 of the members present, may hold a closed executive session. If consent to the executive session is not given, the item may be discussed in open session or withdrawn from consideration. Is there a motion to move to executive session?
Second.
Motion from Sharon Thompson and second from Councilmember Gabler. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, opposed, nay. All right, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, we're now in executive session. If I could ask the room to clear just for about 15 minutes. We hope it won't take longer. Thank you very much. Grab a cup of coffee on your way out. We'll be right back in order. We'll call you back in. Thank you so much. And while the room is clearing, Barb, if you could come to the podium, please. All right, we will resume our regular meeting agenda, beginning with public comments. Public comments. For the record, we have closed an executive session. We did not make any decisions during that executive session, but we did discuss items that were, as I discussed, personnel matters relating to our executive director. Anybody for public comment? Seeing now, we'll move on to consent agenda. Is there anybody who'd like to pull an item off for discussion outside the consent agenda? Mr. Pico.
Well, I'm not going to pull it off. I just want to bring up the one point on the water quality site applications. You have one.
5C.
5C. And we took a little bit of look at that because that is putting a lift station into an area. And one of the projects we have in utilities in Colorado Springs is to take a look at putting in a interceptor. So as I like to call it, getting away from heavy lifting and moving to the go with the flow program. But anyway, that opens that up. But however, the timing of all of that is such that they really do need to put that in place. And so I'm mentioning that as kind of like a watch item. but it does need to move forward.
Is there a motion to accept the consent items?
So moved.
Motion to accept. Is there a second? A second from Commissioner Elsner. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, nay. Great, thank you. Item 6A, nominating committee appointment. As you know, we re-elect our board officers for the Pikes Peak Area Council of Government Board of Directors each year. You've received comments from members of the board as to the willingness to serve as officers. You received that as item 6A is your packet. One of the rules is that we appoint a nominating committee. I appoint as chair. The nominating committee consisting of members who are not open to appointment as board officers. To date, I've received 2 persons who have expressed an interest to not serve in any position, and that's Councilmember Andy Pico and Mayor Ken Giray. Is there anybody else willing to serve on the nominating committee? Commissioner Mark Waller.
Thank you. And I had submitted my name as in consideration for one of the executive committee positions. However, I'll remove my name from that consideration and volunteer to be on the nominating committee.
Very good. Thank you, Mark. All right. Is there any other discussion on this item? Great. I would like then to appoint Andy Pico, Ken Giray, both willing to still to serve, I assume. Ken? Yep. And Commissioner Mark Waller to the nominating committee for the Board of Officers of the Pikes Peak Council of Governments. Any further discussion there? All right. We'll move on then to project cost overruns, item 6B, action item. Ken? Ken? Yeah.
Quick procedural question.
Sure.
I was curious about who will convene this. Someone going to take the lead?
So the
to do
3
that?
of you
Staff will do that?
could meet separately, decide when you want to meet.
So we'll figure it out.
I'm 3 very competent persons who can figure it out from here.
And we need to do it by next meeting.
You need to present 1 or more slates of officers based on the input from across the board. How you proceed, whether a single slate or multiple slates, is entirely up to you.
I think beers should be involved, though.
But yes, then would provide that information back to the executive director for inclusion in next week's. So I would think you'd want to wrap that up by the end of November, by November 30th, so we can get on in the packet for distribution to our for December board meeting.
That's a tight time frame.
You're welcome.
Gone for a week of Thanksgiving.
You're welcome. All right, Ken, welcome.
Good morning, Ken Prather, PPACG Transportation Planner. Every quarter, we review available funds that come to us from either project reconciliations and closeouts, or maybe money has fallen out of the sky and it's come to us. This quarter, we've identified some funding that's in your memo from 3 funding categories. We did a request for projects that are facing cost overruns. 3 were submitted. The Transportation Advisory Committee, the Community Advisory Committee, and PPACG staff recommends that the funding request for the Manitou Springs Park and Canyon Avenue Bridge project be awarded $656,323, and the Colorado Springs Pikes Peak Greenway Trail project be awarded $534,824. The Transportation Advisory Committee also recommended that the City of Colorado Springs 30th Street project receive the remaining funds that they requested. And after the Transportation Advisory Committee meeting was held, the city learned of some possible changes to the project because of their environmental analysis and an issue of the location of a drainage pond. So they asked not to give up that request, but to delay it a month and come to you next month so that they can address any additional cost overruns that the environmental analysis might have identified. And that is moving forward, coming into the TAC tomorrow and will come to you next month. So at this point, although there was 3 requests, we're only asking for your approval for 2 of them.
Okay. And Kenneth, could you just talk about how these particular projects were considered, how these projects came to be considered, and not a wider list of projects for additional funding?
We did two requests, 2 call for projects in September and October. These were the only 3 that were identified with project cost overruns.
Okay. Any questions for Ken? All right. We do have a proposed motion, item 6B, to approve the cost overrun funding for the Park and Canyon Avenue Bridge project and the Pikes Peak Greenway Trail project as amendment number 3, the FY 2019-2022 TIP, and authorize the appropriate officer to sign the resolution for approval. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Commissioner Pico? Councilman Pico, I'm sorry, and Mayor Jeray, I'm sorry. Keep doing that. Any further discussion on item 6B? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. That's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. And we'll have a signature before the meeting's out. Item 7A, discussion items, 2019 work program. Jessica.
Good morning, Board. Jessica McMullen, your Policy and Communications Manager. So I am here to talk to you about the 2019 PPACG Draft Work Program. As you know, each year we bring you a work program that defines what our major goals are for the upcoming year. It's done in coordination with the budget historically. This year it was done in coordination with the budget and strategic plan. You'll notice one of the things we did is within each section there is a pullout of how it applies to the strategic plan, which priority that program will be working with. Obviously, it includes each program's goals and activities, but also is something that we're planning to keep tying back into you. This version has not been to the CAC yet. They will see it at our November 28th meeting, and then it will come back to the board for approval with any revisions suggested by either board members today or CAC members at that meeting, at our December 12th meeting. Questions?
Okay, questions for Jessica. Jessica, the staffing, starting in page 4, obviously lays out how many full-time equivalents are in each area. Is that consistent with the 2019 budget, which we approved? I hope it is.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That would be the right answer. But any other discussion, questions for Jessica? Stan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. That was an excellent question. Thanks for asking.
Sometimes you take things for granted. I didn't want to. Yeah.
And Mr. Chair, one thing we'll do for the final version that comes before you in December is we want to identify more specifically what's coming out of the strategic plan that you just adopted last month and what's in the work plan that we're focusing on for 2019. We've got a whole host of specific things that we're going to focus on in transportation, aging, information sharing, collaboration. So we'll more explicitly pull those out so you don't have to hunt for them in the work plan so you can see what those are when you adopt. Okay.
Very good. And thank you for that. The strategic plan is something that's brand new to the organization, so this is kind of, I would guess, is a heavy lift to incorporate something brand new into something that's required by regulation. So thank you, though. Yep. Any other questions, comments for discussion? All right. Very good. Thank you very much, Jessica. Item 8A, Joint Land Use Study, JLUS update. Mr. Potts. Brian.
Hello.
Hello.
Brian Potts, Program Manager, Joint Land Use Study. Just wanted to provide a quick update. We are on track to have a draft ready for public comment by end of business this Friday. This is a big moment that we've been waiting for a long time. Well, I wouldn't say waiting for it. We're definitely not sitting around waiting. We had about, I think, compiled between civilian and military for this last round about 300 comments that we're working through. Right now we have half to three-quarters of those resolved. So this Friday we'll be posting that for public comment. And prior to it being posted, we will be sending by email a copy of the draft to all of you prior to when that gets posted, so you have a preview. There's still some critical strategies and maps we're trying to resolve right now, so we weren't at a point where we could give a full briefing. But as soon as the public comment period starts, we're planning to go to respective county commissioners, city councils, and provide a briefing. Or if there's a request by any board members here that you want to have kind of a separate briefing at a point, we can make arrangements for that. Just want to make sure you have an overview of what is coming. So far, we've gotten a lot of good feedback from our military and community stakeholders on the progress of the document, where it stands. So I think that we are looking forward to all of you taking a look at this product. The work sessions that we had last week went fairly well. We didn't have a lot of attendance from the civilians, but we took that as a good sign that they were fine with the comments they provided. And the comment period, public comment period, will last from the end of the day, November 16th, and carry through to December 7th. Once that comment period closes, we will take those comments, craft responses, and make sure to give those to the Joint Land Use Study Policy Committee and technical committees so they can see how we respond to those and provide feedback if there's any other adjustments we need to make. Otherwise, in the first half of December, we're still have to do a doodle poll to see what is going to be the right date, but we're going to do a final acceptance of the document. It doesn't get a formal approval, as it were, because we're not adopting ordinance or regulation or anything like that. It's just accepting that the study is complete. And we will give a full briefing to this committee in December once we know that everything is finalized in the final shape as to a full presentation of the final document. We're really excited about this tool. We think that as we move forward with implementation, which tomorrow we are meeting with our OEA representatives. They're going to be here, and we're going to go through the application and make sure we have everything they need.
An OEA for everybody?
I'm sorry, Office of Economic Adjustment within the Department of Defense. They are the funding authority within DOD that provides 90% of the funding for this grant. So we're going to be working through to make sure that we're in good line for another 18 months in helping local jurisdictions on working through encroachment issues and working with the military. We're going to be here for support. So.
Okay. I'd like to ask for military partners, any comments on the JLU's study, the process, conclusions? Just open up for input. What do you guys think?
So Kirsten Aguilar from Peterson Air Force Base. I just want to pass on, Brian and I spoke earlier this morning, the coordination between the JLU's team and the installations has been phenomenal. There were some minor things, happy so glads, if you will, that we identified. And then there were some issues regarding the mapping for Peterson Air Force Base, so we wanted to make sure that we documented and got it correct, which was an easy change. And so I just wanted to pass on our appreciation for the open communication, the collaboration, and the great teamwork. And we're hopeful that the Office of Economic Adjustment will come through with the execution money, because as Brian and I were discussing earlier, really an opportunity to have a good living document that both the community and the military can use. As for us specifically at Peterson and our counterparts at Schriever, we continue to monitor and wait on some decisions regarding potential mission increase in our community, and it'd be important to make sure that we have that documented. So we're grateful for the opportunity to collaborate. Thanks.
Any comments?
Dan Finkelstein from the Air Force Academy. I'd like to echo what the Colonel said. For us, it's really important that this is going forward and that we continue to work together, which have great success, because the Academy sees potentially an increase in a lot of its flying operations and things as it tries to respond to bigger Air Force needs and continued working together. And like you said, living document will be very, very important to make sure that's balanced with the things that are happening outside the gate and that we're both successful.
Great.
I feel, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just Ron Jeffrey from Schriever. I echo the same comments. We appreciate the opportunity to participate. We appreciate the including Schriever in the study and allowing us to identify those issues. Certainly as missions change, get added, and there's continued anticipated growth in both Peterson and Schriever, we look forward to continuing to work with you and work with the PPACG to make sure that all of the requirements are understood and well documented.
Hal from Fort Carson. I feel obligated to say something since everyone else has. You know, we live in a great community, and we already have very good relationships, at least we believe that, from Fort Carson with communities and the other installations in the area. So I think for us, this joint land use study helped us to crystallize some ideas and issues on paper that we'll continue to move forward with. But I would say that we already have a great community, so I think this helps us move forward, though. Thanks.
I'd have to mention, we did this visit to D.C. a couple weeks ago, months ago. One of the things that stood out was how aware our national leadership is aware of Colorado Springs and our military partners here, and the connection that we have. This JLU study came up at discussions. I wasn't at the Pentagon trip, but things like this are important, not just locally, but nationally. It matters to national leadership when there's a close connection between a community and our military partners. We recognize that the purpose of the military, having served myself, is that they serve our great country, people who live and or raise their families here. So the stronger we recognize that, the greater we work together, just good things happen. So.
Yeah, and I got to say, it's been very encouraging throughout the process to see, working with all the stakeholders, the military and civilian, it's been a great process, and I've really enjoyed working with everyone and making these connections, and I'm looking forward to that continuing to be bolstered by this process. So.
Another thing I just mentioned, I talked to the other MPOs, COGs around the state, they don't have this. The connection that we have with our local community partners, our major federal partners, our DOD folks. And I think there's just a hair bit of envy there of how good we have it and working together in a great community. It's not always that partners like civilian governments and military work together. Sometimes there's animosity, there's anger, the tone is very different than what we find here in Pikes Peak.
Yep.
Good. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And I think that relationship and that connection goes in both directions. I can remember when we had the 117 fire down south, and Fort Carson stopped their training so they could send their firefighting crews to join forces with the county and deal with that fire. So I just continue to be grateful for that. This relationship goes both ways. It is robust, it is solid, and I appreciate it.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much. More to come next month.
All right. Item 8B, long-range transportation plan schedule update. And is anybody going to present that? Do we have any presenter?
Jennifer or John, if you don't mind, in her steed. We'll improvise a little.
Man of the hour, John.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, this item is just to give you an update on the long-range plan. At this point, we're just waiting for the financial plan update, and that will be something that is contingent on the final numbers we get from CDOT. And my understanding, I believe, is the CDOT board meets tomorrow. So hopefully that item will be adopted with the formulas, and then sometime in early December, we'll receive the financial plan so then we can go ahead and move forward. So while this is delaying this particular phase about a month or so, our ultimate deadline should stay true. I think the other thing that Jennifer wanted to mention was that part of this process, in, I believe, February now, we're going to be having a Smart Cities workshop where we're going to talk about how technology will have an impact on the long-range plan. Jason O'Brien, who you've met previously, and Jennifer and others on staff, Catherine, have been putting together a solid about 3 or 4 hour panel. So we look forward to that, and we'll send that out to you all and invite you all, and hopefully you'll be able to make that. And again, I believe that's going to be in about February. So with that, any other questions that my staff can answer that I can't?
Well, we did have a smart city discussion on Pueblo, led by Bob CDOT, I can't think of this gentleman's name, who led that conversation.
Bob Pfeiffer?
Pfeiffer, yes, thank you. Very productive about what the future is, and think, good discussion, I thought, too. So, Jill, go ahead.
You and I did have a discussion about trying to bring in the City of Colorado Springs, who has been actively working on these issues, just so we're complementing and not conflicting. Has that occurred, and is Ryan Trujillo part of this conversation?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, so I've forwarded your email on to Brian, but I don't know if Brian has connected with Mr. Trujillo. However, we did have another meeting here last Thursday where we talked about how PPACG can interact a little better with all of you and do some more regional activities.
Great.
And I believe Mr. Trujillo was there. That was
was.
the gentleman in the corner, right, Andy?
Yeah, he was.
So,
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for John?
or Jennifer.
Or Jennifer? She's now here.
I think I've covered everything, but now that we've got the real expert here, now you can give me a tough question that I can give to Jennifer. Nope?
Nope. No. Thank you very much, John. Appreciate it. All right, item 8C, 2018 ozone report.
Good afternoon, Ken Prather, PPACG Transportation Planner. The EPA has established national ambient air quality standards for 6 pollutants. They are carbon monoxide, lead, nitrogen dioxide, ozone, particulate matter, and sulfur dioxide. Andy asked me to look into our situation, what are the levels here in Colorado Springs in our area, and as of middle of August, the results that I could find, we are in compliance with all of those standards for those pollutants. I do want to draw your attention to the ozone levels, though. Over the years, EPA has continued to reduce the ozone standard from 80 parts per billion to 75 parts per billion down to 70 parts per billion. And we have all of our monitors. We have one in the south part of the Air Force Academy and one in Manitou Springs, and we have always been under those standards. Well, this summer, both monitors exceeded, they went over the limit, which is 70 parts per billion. Both monitors measured 73. That's the bad news. The good news is that to be in compliance with the standard, it's an average of 3 years. So the fact that we exceeded the limit this year does not put us out of compliance. It's a rolling average. But what that means is next year we cannot be any higher than 70 parts per million or 70 parts per billion at either monitor, or we will be out of compliance with the standard. The implications if we become out of compliance is that we will be declared a non-attainment area for ozone by the EPA. We will have to develop what's called a state implementation plan for ozone, a SIP, and in that we identify where are the sources of the ozone, where is it coming from, and that could be in our region, it could be from outside our region. But what are the sources? And then based on those sources, what are the strategies that we're going to do to get ourselves into compliance? Then we go through several years of working to get ourselves into compliance, and then we would be in a maintenance area for 20 years. A lot of effort, a lot of work. The other implication or consequence is that we would be eligible for carbon congestion mitigation and air quality improvement, the CMAQ funds that we have been receiving as a maintenance area for carbon monoxide, but in the next year or two we will be out of that. We will be declared attainment for carbon monoxide because we're at the end of our 20-year maintenance period, so we would no longer be eligible for any CMAQ funds in our area. But if we become non-attainment for ozone, then we would continue to be eligible for CMAQ funds.
Okay, could you talk about some of the strategies that we would possibly consider? You talked about sources and what some of the strategies might be on the table for us to reduce ozone.
The inventory for carbon monoxide identified transportation-related sources, cars and buses and trucks and motorcycles, as between 70 and 80% of the source. So assuming that ozone was similar, then our strategies would be focused around automobiles and trucks. And I'm sure that what would be proposed at the top of the list would be the inspection program that the Denver area is currently using, the IM-240 or the dynamometer where you put your vehicle on a treadmill for 6 minutes or 4 minutes, and it speeds up and slows down and coasts, and they get a measure of the emissions from that. Ozone is not produced by combustion, but the precursors of it, the volatile organic compounds and the nitrous oxides are produced. They react in the sunlight, and the warmer the air, the faster they react, the more ozone they produce. So ozone is a summer problem. So we'd be looking at automobile sources, how to make them cleaner, how to get rid of gas vehicles and use electric cars, or otherwise called coal cars. But in our inventory, the power plant is also identified as a source. And so switching it from cars to power plants doesn't solve the problem. So there has to be, in our inventory or in our strategy, we evaluate the benefit of each strategy and the cost and decide what we want to do. So it could be cleaner cars, fewer cars, other sources, power plants, dry cleaning, all those dry cleaning vapors that get exhausted out of the washing machine when they're finished, that goes up into the air, and that's part of your ozone precursors, paint fumes, wildfires, rocket engine testing. There's just all kinds of things that get identified, but probably transportation would be the primary source, and the strategies would be focused on that.
If I could, Mr. Chair, we're going to get our Air Quality Technical Committee back together as well and begin to drill into this, see where the sources, where it's coming from, which portion is coming from transportation and other sources, and then start identifying some strategies. Maybe there's some things we could do somewhat proactively. I don't know when they take the measurements next year, if there's stuff we could do in the meantime that might help us reduce the effects for next year's measurement. But in any event, we need to get that committee back together to really take a look at what kind of measures we might be able to embrace.
This would be a few years before we would be declared. We've got to have the results next year. They've got to be verified, and then however long it takes EPA to make their decision.
So no need to panic yet. No. Yes. Sorry. Yes. Ken? I'm sorry. Andy Pico.
Yeah, the ozone report caught my attention, and I had staff do a little bit of research, not this staff, but some others. And one of the issues that really comes up, you've already touched on almost all the points I was going to make, but one of the issues also is unusual events that come in there. So what the EPA will do is if we flag certain events, certain days as being this was out of the norm and it's external, EPA does have a process to take those out of the measurements. And in fact, looking at this last summer, they're taking a look at, and this is information from Denver and Fort Collins, but it applies here as well. And that there's hot days and smokes from fire. And they correspond to the days that we had high readings. So the issue is more the issue of where it's coming from may not be local, but it's a whole long administrative process to run through that and screen that stuff out and ensure the measurements are accurately recorded for our local region as opposed to being affected by fires out of Pikes Peak National Forest, which probably has much more of an impact than most any other point source here within the Springs. So a lot more to come. A lot of staff work that looks in the future in interaction with the EPA and the Colorado Department of Public Health. So much more to come.
Okay. Ken?
I guess I have a slightly different approach to this, and I would suggest that anybody that attended the Air Quality Control Commission hearing down here, one of the things that was said is that we don't breathe on an average. We breathe every day. And so when there are days that are above the limit, we're breathing it. And so to suggest that the 3-year average is not something to worry about is not something that I follow or support. Okay. When we breathe bad air, we suffer the consequences. And so I have concerns about looking at the 3-year average. I'd like us to be more aggressive, particularly for Manitou Springs. We live in a valley. We suffer the effects of the traffic that backs up, both in our town and on Highway 24. And whether those effects are coming directly from there or coming from someplace else, our community is in jeopardy. And so I appreciate the group getting together. I appreciate perhaps a more aggressive approach to this so that all of our citizens feel safe and able to breathe the air that we have. This report was very concerning, and as I say, the methodology of looking at a 3-year average, in my opinion, is not reflective of what we're presenting or the atmosphere for which we're living in. And so I'd urge some diligent effort.
Andy?
I don't disagree with the sentiment behind that, but I'm going to point out that we have to be careful about understanding what the sources are, because if you put together a program that hits the wrong source, then you don't actually solve the problem.
Okay. Any other questions, Stan?
Yes, thank you. How is that actually calculated? And the question for me is, notwithstanding the mayor's point, if one day exceeds the standard, does that mean the entire year fails?
No, the monitors run continuously. They run every day, and you can get the monitor results daily. The standard is based on the 4th highest day. So 4 of the 3 days, we already had higher levels than 73 parts per billion. The 4th day was 73 parts per billion. We actually exceeded the standard on the 5th highest day. So the national standard by law is an average of the 3 years on the 4th highest day of each one of those years per monitor. So if one monitor fails that standard, then we are eligible to be declared non-attainment for ozone from a legal standpoint. Now, the issue that the mayor brings up is that you're breathing it every day. That's true, and that's a separate issue from the legal issue of what we have to do if we're declared non-attainment. And we can certainly take the steps, as Andy has already identified or mentioned, that we want to reconvene the Air Quality Technical Committee and start looking at the things that we can do on a voluntary basis and not wait several more years for us to be declared non-attainment, where then we have to do something legally.
Thank you.
Ken, our unregistered vehicles, and I'm thinking now our military vehicles who do not carry a Kansas tag, are they exempt from any program of air quality?
That would depend on the program that is established, that we would establish, and so I'm trying to think for military vehicles for carbon monoxide. I think they were exempt. It was only the registered vehicles. So a lot of military do get their vehicles registered locally, but a lot do not.
Well, I'm thinking now the 10-ton, the 1009s, and the large military vehicles.
Those
have
tactical vehicles are exempt.
They are, okay.
But the administrative vehicles, the sedans.
No, I got that. But I'm thinking the large tactical vehicles.
They are exempt.
Tanks.
The combat vehicles. Yeah, they are exempt. Yeah.
Okay. Any other question, discussion for Ken? All right, thank you, Ken. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Move on to military installation reports, 9A. Hal, you want to start us off today?
Thank you very much. Hal Allgaier from Fort Carson. Just a couple comments about our battle rhythm on Carson these days. 2nd Brigade's coming back. I think you saw that in the papers, and some of you have been involved in welcome home ceremonies. They'll continue to come back through the month of November, should all be back here by the end of the month. So that's good news for us. The division headquarters, about 200 soldiers with General George and his staff depart in December. I think they may already have some folks heading to Afghanistan, but they'll all be gone early December. I noted the other day that General George is taking a little bit of leave, and I think he's turned over his headquarters to the rear detachment right now. So they're very quickly going to be out of the area. We continue to work on the conversion of the infantry brigade to the Stryker brigade. That was decided by the Army to make that conversion. And we'll actually have Strykers in 2020, but there's a lot of work that we'll need to do before we get to that point. And then finally, I'd just mention the Security Force Assistance Brigade, the SFAB, that 800 top-heavy unit that is standing up at Fort Carson. The commander was identified the other day, along with the Sergeant Major. We continue to renovate a few buildings on post to support that stand-up, and they should be starting to build strength after the first of the year. So that's exciting for us as well. But as quick as they form together as a team, they'll go through several months of training, and the expectation is that they'll be deployed overseas fairly quickly. So that's our report from Carson. I don't know if there are any questions for me.
Anybody for Carson?
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Peterson?
Hi, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Colonel Kirsten Aguilar, Peterson Air Force Base. On behalf of Colonel Todd Moore, the 21st Space Wing Commander, thanks for having me here again today. Colonel Moore sent his regrets. He's actually left this morning to go to Cape Cod to visit with some of our folks there. And so I'm not sure if all the members of the board are aware that even though the 21st Space Wing is headquartered at Peterson, we are actually a global wing. I actually had a chance to go out and visit with our folks in Copenhagen and then get a chance to go to Thule, Greenland, my first trip to Greenland, and visit with our folks. And so Colonel Moore just wanted me to make sure that we pass on that although there's about 4,000 folks in the 21st Space Wing, they're not all physically located here in Colorado Springs in the Pikes Peak area. Wanted to provide an update on the Colorado Springs Airport lease that Peterson Air Force Base has been working on for several years. And we want to pass on our appreciation to the city and to the airport because we finally have an approved lease, which will give Peterson Air Force Base the ability to expand our fence line about 277 acres, which affords us an opportunity to look at expansion. We could use the additional land now, but as we continue to potentially have additional missions coming to the base, it provides us a great opportunity. So we're very grateful for all the stakeholders in the support. It was a long process, but in the end, I think it's going to be beneficial for both the city, the airport, and then specifically for Peterson. I did want to provide an update briefly on PFOS, PFOA. So to date, the Air Force has spent approximately $50 million on mitigation, specifically for the wide field security in the Fountain communities. And I pass on my personal appreciation to the City of Fountain, who afforded me an opportunity last month to speak at their City Council meeting and provide an update to their residents and the efforts that the Air Force has done specifically in Fountain. 2 weeks ago, Peterson and Cheyenne Mountain conducted a week-long semi-annual exercise that we do twice a year. And I just want to pass on the appreciation to several stakeholders in the room. As many of you know, we have several memorandums of agreement with the city, the county, the county coroner's office, police and fire, and a lot of times we rely heavily on their involvement to build realism into our exercises. And so 2 weeks ago, most of the exercises is a training opportunity, but we took a look at active shooter. We also looked at a vehicle-borne IED at one of our gates, and being able to have the ability to execute some of those memorandums of agreement, have members from the county participate, just adds to the training value. So we appreciate the support. We know that it takes away from other efforts that you have, but it is definitely beneficial for our airmen, and so we appreciate that. And finally, as we enter into the holiday season, we're getting excited about NORAD Track Santa. The commercial is finalized. It should air in the next couple of weeks, and we look forward to all the kiddos getting a chance to call in. So pending any questions, that's all I have for you. Thank you.
How many folks are involved in that Santa event? How many? What do you think? Hundreds.
Yes, I'm Sergeant Longfellow from the Public Affairs Office. It's about 100 to 150 individuals. Wow. And we ask around the 21st Space Wing if they can have, we have volunteers. We basically kind of sit in a room like this, and we answer phone calls constantly. It's about 2-hour increments. Sometimes people do it several times during the day on the 24th, but it's a very, very busy day. But yeah, it's about 150 to 200 people that actually is able to actually make this all possible.
Wow. Great.
It's grown so much.
Any questions for Colonel Aguilar? Thank you very much. Appreciate the
Thank you.
update. And Schreiber, Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. Just a few comments from Schriever. First of all, the 50th Space Wing and other Front Range bases joined the U.S. Strategic Command in the recently completed Global Thunder 2019, an annual command and control exercise that provided training opportunities which assessed all U.S. STRATCOM mission areas and joint and field training operational readiness with a specific focus on nuclear readiness. For Global Thunder 2019, the U.S. STRATCOM headquarters staff, U.S. STRATCOM components, and subordinate units, including the 50th Space Wing, participated in the exercise to test readiness and ensure a safe, secure, ready, and reliable strategic deterrent force. Global Thunder involved extensive planning, coordination, and provided unique training for the 50th Space Wing and other U.S. STRATCOM assigned units and our allies. We talked, moving on now to partnerships, we certainly talked about the value of partnerships. We take that very seriously at Schriever Air Force Base. And as an example, Schriever and the 50th Space Wing continues its partnership with Ellicott School District. The 50th Space Wing hosted high school and middle school students for diversity and inclusion events highlighting science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in various career fields. Additionally, Schriever Airmen volunteered at the elementary school's recent annual field day events. Schriever and Ellicott will collaborate to execute an annual 2-week summer student enrichment event to enhance the experience of the students. And then finally, the base chaplain's office is partnered with Ellicott School District to sponsor the Angel Tree program, providing toys and clothing for children in the local community on the installation in need. 50th Space Wing is also proud to have participated in several recent local Veterans Day activities. Colonel Grant, 50th Space Wing Commander, and Command Chief Alexander, the 50th Space Wing Command Chief, were keynote speakers at the Ellicott School District Veterans Day celebration at Ellicott High School on November 8th. In addition, Colonel Jacob Middleton, the Vice Commander, and Chief Master Sergeant Alexander participated in the 2018 Colorado Springs Veterans Day Parade in Colorado Springs on November 2nd. We're proud to participate in these events, and we're proud that the community took the time to recognize the contributions of our veterans. And one final note on giving. Everybody in the federal government is participating now in the combined federal campaign. Certainly we've got a campaign going at Schriever. One of the things that I'd like to highlight is that in addition to monetary contributions, our federal employees and our military members can also donate volunteer hours through the CFC. So that's one aspect of the program that we're emphasizing this year at Schriever, is that our airmen and our civilians can contribute to the local community by donating volunteer hours to those charities that are part of the CFC. And with that, I don't have any other comments. I'll take any questions if there are any.
Any questions for Ron? All right, United States Air Force Academy.
Yes, so on behalf of the Air Force Academy and Colonel Campbell, thank you for having me and having this chance. Just a couple quick reminders really to start. Obviously, Thanksgiving is coming up, and while lots of folks will travel, it means something special at the Academy because we have a mass exodus of 4,000 cadets on that Tuesday. That's the last day of class. So if you're trying to be around the Academy after classes on Tuesday, you're going to see
Which Tuesday?
The Tuesday prior to Thanksgiving, so that's the 20th. Also, there is a football game that day, so it's notoriously underattended. So if you're looking for something cheap to do and you have family in town, come on out. Just with the recent weather, it affects us a little bit differently in that the base is normally open, but when we have weather and we start doing 2-hour delays and things like that, we actually will close the base to visitors too. So if that impacts things that you're planning or doing, keep that in mind. This December, the chapel is scheduled to close for its renovations, so that will be for approximately 4 years. That chapel closure date has slipped once already. It was supposed to be the last summer, and it moved to this December. So it's not impossible that it wouldn't slip again. But the plan right now is still the last services in the chapel will be winter holiday services for the cadets immediately before they depart for the break, and then it would close and be closed for approximately 4 years. So,
Where do you put all those weddings? Because I know they're lined up like at 20-minute intervals, right?
you know, surprisingly, the club at the Air Force Academy has built a whole new pavilion to pick up some of that business. So they've seen it as an
Okay.
opportunity.
Good.
Also, graduation, slight change to graduation. As General Johnson, the former superintendent, left, she had a big push to move graduation ahead of Memorial Day so that the people working at the academy could then celebrate Memorial Day. There's some logistics things with that that were unanticipated, so now we're going back to the traditional first Wednesday after Memorial Day, so that will be a change to graduation this year, if anyone is looking forward to that. And then big picture, just from General Silveria, the Air Force Academy continues to try and align with the Air Force and the Air Force needs. Some things that probably won't affect folks, but just for your awareness, the Academy traditionally graduates lieutenants who then go off to the appropriate Air Force schools to earn their specific credentials in their particular career field. They're looking at bringing some of that training within the Air Force Academy for very few, but a handful of careers. Cadets would actually graduate with their degree, their commission, and their initial qualifications to go serve on active duty. So that'll change some of the training that happens at the Academy. No final decisions on that, but that's probably looking to be a year or two out. With that, I'll open it to questions. Sir?
Earlier, you mentioned something about expanding the flight training program. So how much of an increase in flight training? As I anticipate the noise complaints rolling into the council.
Yeah, so there's been no final decision on that. Part of it is actually changing some of the flight training that currently happens in Pueblo and bringing some of that into the Air Force Academy. The other piece is taking a look at the purpose of the training program. Right now it is a familiarization, orientation, kind of motivational piece. They're looking again, in accordance with the previous comments, of how do you graduate someone after 4 years and have them best positioned so they can immediately go to pilot training. I don't know exactly what that will translate into, how many extra sorties and what they'll be, and when that'll happen, but it's probably 2 to 3 years off, because the other piece of this is that's what the Air Force Academy wants. The Air Force is currently undergoing a pilot shortage, and so there's a tension there of, can we actually get the people to do that instruction?
Okay, right. Appreciate the heads up. If at any point that you start significantly increasing it, just not that we're going to necessarily do very much, but we'd kind of like to appreciate knowing as we get the noise complaints coming in from all the retired Air Force people that live up there. And as all the cadets depart on Tuesday, how many of them are flying out of Colorado Springs Airport? Just a commercial.
Okay, any other questions for our...
And Norm, I've got one.
Oh, yes, go
Excuse
ahead.
me.
Yeah.
Colonel, can you give us a little update on the Visitors Center, what the plans are, anything in that regard?
As far as I know, there have been no major changes, that things are still moving forward. I know that there's an effort to annex is the right word, and there's some implications for taxes and the folks that are the developer that's trying to develop that parcel. They're looking at ways that they can make their business model, more profitable. And one of the things that they're proposing is that that parcel of land be annexed within the city for tax purposes. There's still some back and forth between lawyers about how to do that and filing the right motions. But outside of that, everything is proceeding as planned. Do you have specific questions? I mean, there's still plans for folks that aren't aware, north of the North Gate, outside the North Gate, the Air Force Academy is leasing some property to a private developer. That developer is going to develop that land to include some hotels, some commercial space, think like a indoor skydiving thing, some restaurants, things like that. And also part of that development will be a new visitor center for the Air Force Academy, but will also be tied into Colorado Springs. So that's the general general plan.
Public-private city combination.
Yes, it's a combination. I don't know the exact specifics, but in general, my very tactical understanding is that the Air Force Academy is leasing that land. The cost for leasing that land is to build the Air Force Academy a visitor center. I think the city is contributing some money, and there's going to be, while it's a visitor center for the academy, it's sort of a welcome center, if you will, to the Pikes Peak region, and we'll have tie-ins to the city of Colorado Springs and beyond.
Great, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Move on to Mobility Coordinating Committee report. Mobility Coordinating, okay. Joe?
Joe Urban, Area Agency on Aging. We're in between chairs right now. I think you have the report in your packet. I would be happy to answer any questions. The one thing I would note, there's a listing in there of the current members of the Mobility Coordinating Committee. That opportunity is open to every municipality that participates in the PPACG, and right now, Fountain is the only one that has a member on that group. So we would certainly invite any representation.
From municipalities. Okay. Andy?
So there's no one from Colorado Springs?
We have non-voting members, which is PPACG, myself, and Brian Champion from Mountain Metro. Those two are non-voting entities, but from the city itself, we have no one.
Has that vacancy been communicated to the city?
I do not know.
Probably a follow-up would be appropriate.
Yeah, I don't think we can advertise for that. Okay.
Okay. And so there's 13 cities in our region. Each one would have a representative authorized.
According to the bylaws, each one has an opportunity to have a representative.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just real quick question. Is there a short blurb about this committee in terms of when they meet, how often, and so forth and so on that we might get and send out?
Sure, we can get that to you. It's the last Tuesday of each month.
Maybe you just put something together and just put a quick blast to board?
If you could.
We can get that out, sure.
That would be great.
Hopefully we'd expect then a nomination from the cities. The onus then is on the city government to make a nomination, which then will be accepted by the full board for seating on the MCC. Great. Thank you.
I'd like to make
Sharon?
a quick comment. Just having attended their meetings several times, I find this group of people that are very, very talented, and you learn a lot of education, and you find out really what's going on within your community with the various groups that are providing services to your people that are needing alternate transportations. And it's, if you have someone in the city that's interested in that, doesn't necessarily have to be a staff member. It can be a citizen. I think that you would find it very worthwhile.
Good. Thank you, Joe. TAC, Transportation Advisory Committee, Brian Vitulli.
Good morning, Brian Vitulli, City of Colorado Springs, Mountain Metropolitan Transit, and Chair of the Transportation Advisory Committee. Our meeting in October, we had one action item, and that was the cost overrun item that you addressed this morning, which also made up the TIP Amendment 3. So we recommended approval, and we'll be meeting tomorrow to continue work on project scoring for the long-range transportation plan and some other items. To also address Councilmember Pico's comment, I believe we have two members on the MCC. We have one voting member and one non-voting member.
That's Mountain Metro, that's not necessarily.
Well, Mountain Metro is the non-voting member, and we have another Mountain Metro staff member who is a voting member. I believe that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Jacob Matson is our ADA paratransit coordinator, and Brian Champion is our mobility coordinator.
Yeah, Jacob is listed as a non-voting alternate.
Right. Yeah, my understanding is we have one of each.
Yeah, but does that the city representative, or do we also have another slot? So that's something for us to follow.
We just have two.
You just have two.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions for Brian from TAC? Very good. Seeing none, thank you, Brian.
Thank
Appreciate it. Community Advisory Committee, Jessica, speaking on behalf of their chair.
My chair, vice chair, and second chair were all unable to attend.
And you're it.
The main conversations at the CAC were the site applications, the project cost overruns, and the beginning of looking at the work program draft and the budget overview. We had to let them know that you guys kind of jumped the expectation by approving the agenda, the budget, as soon as you saw it, rather than seeing the draft, sending it to the CAC, and then approving it, which they were all fine with. But we're just going to make sure that they see it before you guys do next year. Nominated their officers for 2019, discussed that long-range transportation plan update, and then the group gave a couple of interesting updates just to make sure that all of you know. IndieGive has kicked off, so there are a huge variety of nonprofits in the Pikes Peak region that are now collecting funds. It's a fundraising campaign that benefits 94 different nonprofits.
IndieGive. That,
IndieGive.
As an independent?
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
They have 94 nonprofits this year.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
How does that relate to the empty stocking fund, for example? Do you have any idea? Is there a connection between IndieGive and, no, it's not?
There's
Okay.
not.
Okay. Okay. I got it. Okay. Any questions for Jessica? All right. Thank you. We'll move on to Regional Advisory Council. Back to Joe. Dave is not in either. Okay.
Mr. Betzler was not able to be here today. The RAC, you've got the minutes from our most recent meeting. The only thing I would add is actually not in the minutes, that we and the AAA anticipate getting the balance, we hope, of our federal funding for FY19 sometime in the next 2 to 3 weeks, at which point we will have a kind of a mini RFP for the balance of those funds and then distribute those. Generally, those go to organizations that have a great need and have exhausted their funds at a more rapid rate than anticipated.
Okay. Any questions on for Joe for the RAC? Seeing none, thank you. CDOT update. Mark Andrew. Welcome, Mark. Welcome back.
I'm Mark Andrew, the North Program Engineer for CDOT. As we all know, that 110 and 109 did not pass. CDOT does have a plan if those were not to pass, and we're executing that plan. Essentially, what we're looking at is holding the gap whole. We will fund the gap with the Senate Bill 267. We did have that bill that was passed a couple of years ago. So the first year of Senate Bill 267 is going to strategic projects, and again, those will move forward, and $250 million of that is going to the gap. Years 3 through 5 of Senate Bill 267 have not been decided. We will decide likely next November, December timeframe. There may be another ballot measure coming out, and at that point, I think whether 267 gets absorbed in another bill is a possibility. But what that means for our region is we won't know until maybe November whether we get additional projects funded down here with 267. A good candidate project would be the Research and Powers project, which will be shelf-ready for construction, but again, no construction funding for that project. Regarding the other ballot projects, we are moving forward on some corridors to help redefine or further define early action projects. For example, US 24, we want to continue that effort without even going into a big design effort, but we'd like to further that momentum to figure out, hey, what would be the next logical project on US 24. So we'll spend a little bit of time with that. On 24, we are going to do a resurfacing project that'll go from 8th Street to Waldo Canyon, and we'll release that this winter. We were hoping that if the ballot passes, we would delay that project or combine it with some type of capacity project. But since we don't have the funding, we'll move forward with our surface treatment project on that road. On State Highway 94, next month we're going to come to the board with an update on our traffic study and look at what the need is out there for future growth. And then with that, we're also going to launch into a planning and environmental linkage study. and we hope to get that done, expedite that within 6 to 9 months. We'll see if we can do that. But we want to be able to identify some early action projects on 94 if funding does come along. So that's our goal, is to, again, continue to move forward with that corridor as well, even though no construction money is available. With regard to other projects, for like I-25 from Circle down to Fountain, we know that that was a ballot project to widen that to 6 lanes, maybe down to 16, I believe was the ballot description. But we are looking at a surface treatment project on that road because it's in poor condition. So we're not moving forward with any widening projects at this point. We'll probably just end up shelving what we have finished and just take care of the road itself at this point. So generally, we're going to look at our asset management funding and take care of really what we have in terms of bridges and resurfacing roads at this point. So that's CDOT moving forward in this area, and it's pretty consistent across the state. Again, we do have some projects from 267 that will be moving forward.
Right.
So.
And Senate Bill 267, if you just a reminder, was the transportation bill from 2017 legislative session. Total amount allocated, I forget.
It was around 1.8 billion, but
yeah.
Some of that went to transit and locals.
Yeah.
And I believe there was $1 billion to $1.2 billion for CDOT transportation projects.
Okay. And Senate Bill 1, which was passed last year, had a partial repeal, I think, of 267, but it also will bring back to the voters in November of 2019 a smaller ballot bond measure, I think around $2.5 billion.
That's what I've been hearing, too.
Yeah.
I know the legislature would like to do something around that figure. So, again, we want to continue to move forward, identify these projects better, and we can better prioritize them to fit the money that we might get.
Okay. Questions are for Mark from CDOT? Anybody? Yep, appreciate it. Thank you for the update, Mark.
Turner?
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Nothing on 24 East then?
Nothing on 24 East. Again, we finished the study. Again, if there's a surface treatment job that needs to be done, we'll look at that. I know there's the outlying years, 3-4 years out, there's a need to look at resurfacing that road. So before I'm done, I'd like to introduce Eric Richardson. Eric, could you stand up? So Eric's our new government liaison, takes the place of Aaron Greco. So Aaron can help with communication on any new bills or things like that I can't answer. So please use him if you need to do so.
Great. Maybe we could just get your contact information to run the board here, Eric. Appreciate you coming this morning. Good, thank you. Good. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Quick update, item 9G. Historically, STAC for the last year or so has been talking about specific projects to be funded in the event that 109 or 110 passed. Of course, both failed. So there were about $70 million of projects identified, for example, on the West 24 corridor that are no longer funded, or at least by a ballot initiative. The one item that did come up, I just want to bring attention to it, the last act was a proposal by CDOT to receive input on when a lane should be managed and when it should not. There was they were seeking input from MPOs around the state. There was a fairly narrow time frame, though, about 2 months to get input statewide for specific criteria defining when a lane should be managed or not. And not just tolling, but the number of criteria, 12 or 15 different options for how a lane should be managed. Everything from tolling to bus rapid transit to peak period shoulder lanes to variable speed limits to a whole range of options. So Director Lewis delayed the implementation of that plan to get input from MPOs. So we don't know specifically what that looked like for the Pikes Peak area, but we do expect CDOT to receive additional input from them, and we would like to. And if you'll maybe address that, how you anticipate addressing that question?
Sure, Mr. Chair. John and I are still trying to strategize to figure out what that's going to look like. We're still waiting to get a copy of the final draft policy from CDOT. That should be forthcoming pretty soon. But I think our initial thought is that we're going to engage with the TAC, obviously, and get feedback from our technical experts and roll up those comments, and then also bring those to the board. But we're still figuring out exactly how and when that's going to occur. But, John, anything else?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, real quickly, in talking to Eric, they're making sure that what they show us addresses what they've already heard, because they know if there are gaps, and if they hand us a document with those gaps already, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So they're updating that, so we're waiting for CDOT to get that to us, then we'll get it to our technical committees as well as you all, and then we'll compile our comments, and then we'll get it back to CDOT for the process.
And this would just be input, and it wouldn't, of course, it'd be definitive, but it would provide input to CDOT for a decision. Mark, you had a comment there?
I just wanted to clarify Turner's comment. On US 24 East, we are doing a passing lane out near Peyton next year. So it'll go out to construction late 2019. So we do have a project plan.
Don't go away. He's got a hand up.
Turner, go ahead.
This is around
I didn't see
tolling.
it.
Oh.
The goal of tolling, is the goal to pay back the cost
No.
of the building? What is the goal?
No, the goal, and then Mark will be able to comment on this, on the purpose, well, I'm going to just open it up and you can add something, but tolling is not, CDOT has never made the point that it's about the money. It will tell you that it's not about the money. The objective of tolling or managed lanes is to discourage traffic in a tolled lane to keep the lane clear enough so that rates of movement can be maintained at full posted limits. To provide certainty in transit time. Good term, yes. Reliability is its primary objective. Mark?
No, that's exactly correct. I mean, the money that is generated does go back to maintain that road and the toll facility, but it's really a zero-sum game in that respect, because it really is about congestion pricing. It is about guaranteeing trip reliability for those that want to pay for that trip reliability. So it will guarantee within that section that you'll make it through that section at a certain speed limit. For example, typically it's 65. When it drops below 65, the price gets adjusted, so you'll always, unless there's an accident or weather, you'll always have that lane available for those that want to use it.
Mark?
Okay, a couple of things here I don't think are consistent with what I've heard before. Number one, with all due respect to the chair here, I think that we have talked about tolling revenues in the past being used for different things. It took us a while to get to tolling for trip reliability, but that's where we landed about a year ago. My question, one of the things you just said that seemed to me to be different than what I've heard before. You talked about dynamic tolling. If speed limits drop below 65 miles an hour, price of the toll goes up. My understanding, at least in the early going on the gap section of I-25, is they're not going to do dynamic tolling. Is that still accurate? Has that changed? Where are we?
I thought that was the case. I can find out. I don't know. So I assume that was the case, but if you've heard something
one
different.
more thing, just real quick, one more thing. One last comment on this. Also, my understanding is that the maintenance piece of this, the revenue generated from tolling for maintenance, isn't limited to the 18-mile gap section, but can be expanded to use north of I-25 or north of Castle Rock going into South Denver. Do you know the answer to that? Because I've heard conflicting pieces about that.
I don't believe that's the case. I believe that the tolling has to stay on the road within that segment. But in terms of dynamic pricing, that's typically how they work. And I can find out for the board. So to clarify that. Because I assume that was the case. If you heard something different, then we'll get the answer.
Okay, Andy?
Just to expand a little bit on the chair's discussion, when this came up at the stack, it was a pretty good brief, was half-hour brief, but it had a wide variety of measures that could be used, not just tolling, but managed lanes is a whole selection box of options that can be used. It started shall call it an entertaining and contentious discussion ensued both during the meeting and after. So it's an ongoing discussion. I think the upshot from the director was that no final decision has yet been made on the gap, exactly how that's going to work. But I will go a little bit further. I've seen the dynamic tolling, and it does work. I've seen it out in California where we got in an 8-lane road, if you could imagine that on one side, 16 total. You got 3 lanes are priced, and you drive down there, you can see the signs up there and give you the toll, and there's not maybe different toll in each one of the tolled lanes, and as you drive along, you'll see them change, which is, I don't know, I find that rather scary because you jump in there and you really don't know what your final bill is going to be until you get to the other end. But you get through. I will acknowledge that you end up getting through in a fairly reasonable time. So a wide variety of stuff, lots more to come about this. And they did take away the fact that they need to do a lot more engagement about getting the input.
Good. So civil, a little pointed at times, but
it was
productive.
Direct, pointed, but civil.
Yes. Yeah. So, and just to be clear here, the tolling is not managed by the CDOT government agency. It's managed by the High Performance Traffic Enterprise, an enterprise run by CDOT. It's a separate entity, and that's why you don't work for HPTE. You're the guy who builds highways.
Yeah, but there's some good questions here. We'll clarify that.
Yeah.
But that was my understanding 6 months ago. That may have changed. So.
Okay.
John Hall is the director for the GAP project, and if the board would like, we can have him come down for the next board meeting, possibly, and
some updates on
give
construction.
us some updates on the construction, answer some more questions on tolling, things like that.
I missed the last I-25 Gap South working session, but that might be helpful. That'd be good. John,
okay.
Mr. Hall down here.
Terrific.
Good. Any other questions for Mark or CDOT? All right, thank you very much. Move on to 9H, Executive Director, Andy.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of miscellaneous items. First of all, you have scheduled a legislative subcommittee meeting on December the 5th at 9 o'clock, I believe it is. And we have a couple of members who have expressed interest and trying to encourage others that really want to weigh in on legislative matters to join us on the 5th at 9 o'clock. A couple of items that we anticipate will be on the agenda. One is a discussion and possibly a recommendation to the full body about federal lobbying contracts and whether or not you want to engage in 2019 and what that might look like. Plus, we have a couple of aging-related issues at the state and federal level, I think, as well, that we're going to bring to the legislative subcommittee. But we can send out a reminder, and if others want to join, we would encourage others to attend as well.
This is legislative agenda planning for 2019. Board members and other interested folks, this is an open public meeting. If you have something you'd like to see on the legislative agenda that we should be advocating for or against, December 5th, 9 a.m., I assume probably here or upstairs?
Upstairs.
Upstairs.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Second item, just real briefly, John alluded to this, and I just wanted to mention this again. We had a planning session last week with a number of transportation planners, public works folks, city managers, I think an elected official, talking about transportation data collection and coordination, and really looking at ways we can kind of break down silos and save us all some money in traffic data we collect, safety data, pavement management information. You're going to hear a lot more about that, but it was one of the big things that you emphasized in the strategic plan, information sharing and collaboration, but had a great turnout last week from all the local jurisdictions, and just excited about the opportunities there. So John and his team with Catherine and Jason will be taking the lead with that, and we're encouraged by the feedback we got from your jurisdictional staff, and just really appreciate that. Next item, Mark mentioned that we'll have Highway 94 presentation on your agenda in December. Appreciate that, and we'll make some time. But also wanted to thank Mark and Dave and other CDOT staff for the corridor tours they provided over the past couple of weeks. We spent 2 Friday afternoons driving up and down I-25, Highway 21, 24, and I think a couple of others, and really got a great sense of what the need is on those corridors and what the plan is for improvements if money does fall from the sky. I know Commissioner Vanderwerf and Councilmember Avila were able to join us on the one tour, but really appreciate CDOT's getting us oriented to what our overall state transportation needs are throughout the region. Really good sessions. Next, just 2 quick personnel matters. Wanted to mention we're going to be advertising soon for our environmental planner position. It was approved by the board last month in the budget, and we really want somebody that can engage in our air quality planning issues and water quality needs going forward. We've been a little bit dormant in the environmental planning area, so we're going to be advertising for that fairly soon. And then finally, the last announcement, it's good news, bad news, kind of bad news for us, but it's good news for the individual. But Ken Prather announced that he's retiring from PPACG. And you'll be with us for a couple of months. I don't know that we've got a certain date yet, but we're saddened. There's a huge shoes to fill. Ken has had just a tremendous run with us here and has always been the utmost professional and a gentleman and a great mentor for many staff here at PPACG. So saddened to have to announce that, but we're very happy for Ken that he's reached that moment where he can finally retire. So we wish him the very best, and we'll have a send-off for him here at some point with the board, but just wanted to let you know hear it here first. So, yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes. Go ahead. Andy.
I still have from my Navy days on my desk my old denied stamp. That,
retirement denied. Ken, we were, first time I've heard that, but thank you for years of service. How many years, Andy? 26 years. Who does anything for 26 years anymore? The same. Wow. Ken, obviously the man. So we will miss you. We'll get something appropriate lined up for you. Wow. Okay. Anything else, Andy? Okay. Okay, quickly around the horn. We're a little before 11 o'clock here. Member entity announcements. Anything you'd like to bring to the attention of the board about things happening in your local governments? Stan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Noting that on our agenda this morning on the consent calendar was a topic about water, I wanted to just make an announcement that the county is working on a water master plan that is countywide. That plan is nearing completion, and there are 2 public hearings that are going to take place that will be at the Planning Commission. The first one will be December 4th in the Planning Commission board meeting, the county Planning Commission board meeting. The second one will be December 18. Would love to have your input for that. There's a lot of work in that on both water quality and water sufficiency. I don't have the time, and my apologies. It's on those dates, and it's their standard meeting. And that's available on the county website, but I'll get it for you if you want me to. Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'd appreciate getting the dates on it. I'm rather interested to hear what your county plan is on water. But just to clarify, the water that was on the consent agenda was wastewater. Yeah, a slight difference.
Water is water. Okay, I appreciate it, though.
No, drinking water, wastewater, stormwater, 3 different waters.
And this is before it's wastewater that we're talking about.
You are. Any other around the table? I'll just mention up in Whittle Park, December 1st, we kick off the holiday season with something called a Breakfast with Santa breakfast. So great event for the kiddos. They generally feed about 1,000 people in 3 hours. Free breakfast, pancakes and sausage and juice. Bring your kids. get to sit in Santa's lap, take a photograph, free. It's all done by donation. So December 1st, 8 a.m., Woodland Park, Youth Pass Cultural Center. Please come.
Yeah, and also tag onto that, the 1st and 2nd at Tweeds is our holiday home tour. Actually, that goes throughout the county. I think there's 7 or 8 homes this year, so that's a big event in Woodland Park also. I believe on the 4th of December, I should have this date and I don't, is the State of the Region, and I think both myself and Mark Dettenreiter are going to speak that day. I'll get the information to Andy or Jessica so they can get it out. You probably have it right there.
I do.
Is it the 4th at 9 o'clock at the Cultural Center?
No.
Good. 14th?
I don't have it. Sorry.
Check the 14th. There you go. Thanks for asking.
Okay, any other questions around the table? Great, thank you all for your time and attention. Sharon, one more thing?
We're really excited in Fountain that Habitat for Humanity did the first veterans build for a veteran to get into a home. And if you have Habitat working in your area, they're hoping to make that an annual event to put a veteran into a home. So if you have a veteran that could qualify, send them their way for their program. Because it took us almost 2 years to find somebody that could qualify for that and was willing to do the work. So they're wanting to do another one next year, and it's quite a process, so they need to apply now.
Okay. Ken?
Just real quick, if you're looking for something fun to do after you've solved water and air quality, we're having Holiday Parade on Friday, November 30th, 6 p.m. Come on out. We close the street, parade up and down. It's a fun event. Come on out and join us.
Good. Okay, well, everybody have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Be thankful for all we have. We live in a great place, great country. Thank you all. We're adjourned.